Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists. On this video today, we're going to be talking about the young lady. Her name is Emma Gonzalez. Now, she's been the one that's been all over the news, that's been putting down Donald Trump and has been making these speeches before the lamestream media. And I have this speech of hers that was done a few days ago. It's about 7.5 minutes long. We're going to play it in its entirety. Then we're going to come back and we're going to sort of pick apart this speech, because I found out that there was 14 things, factual things that were wrong in her speech, and we're going to go over each point real quickly. We're not going to go in depth. And I can't help but think either she wasn't taught how to do research in high school, which is highly likely, or she just refused to do the research, or she was using talking points given to her by regressive liberals in Broward County, Florida there. So, and I think it's more the latter than it is any of the other two, because of the talking points. I'm not saying the sophistication of them, but just the amount of things she got factually wrong in this speech points to the third option there. So we're going to listen to this video in its entirety, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what was actually factually wrong with that. So give me just a second here to set things up.
We are going to be the kids that you read about in textbooks. Not because we are going to be another statistic about mass shootings in America, but because, just as David said, we are going to be the last mass shooting. Just like Tinker v. Des Moines, we are going to change the law. That's going to be Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in that textbook, and it's all going to be due to the tireless effort of the school board, the faculty members, the family members, and most importantly, the students. The students who are dead, the students still in the hospital, the students who are now suffering from PTSD, the students who had panic attacks during the vigil because the helicopters who wouldn't leave us alone, hovering over the school 24 hours a day. There has been one tweet that I would like to call attention to. So many signs that the Florida shooter was mentally disturbed, even expelled for bad and erratic behavior. Neighbors and classmates knew he was a big problem, must always report such instances to authorities again and again. We did, time and time again. Since he was in middle school, it was no surprise to anyone who knew him to hear that he was the shooter. Those talking about how we should have not ostracized him, you didn't know this kid. Okay, we did. We know that they're claiming that there are mental health issues, and I am not a psychologist, but we need to pay attention to the fact that this isn't just a mental health issue. He wouldn't have harmed that many students with a knife. And how about we stop blaming the victims for something that was the shooter's fault? The fault of the people who let him buy the guns in the first place, those at the gun shows, the people who encouraged him to buy accessories for his guns to make them fully automatic, the people who didn't take them away from him when they knew that he expressed homicidal tendencies. And I am not talking about the FBI. I am talking about the people that he lived with. I'm talking about the neighbors who saw him outside holding guns. If the president wants to come up to me and tell me to my face that it was a terrible tragedy and how it should never have happened, and maintain telling us how nothing is going to be done about it, I'm going to happily ask him how much money he received from the National Rifle Association. And United States in the 1.5 months in 2018 alone, that comes out to being $5,800. Is that how much these people are worth to you, Trump? If you don't do anything to prevent this from continuing to occur, that number of gunshot victims will go up, and the number that they are worth will go down. And we will be worthless to you. To every politician who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you. Would your first thought be, how is this going to reflect on my campaign? Which should I choose? Or would you choose us? And if you answered us, will you act like it for once? You know what would be a good way to act like it? I have an example of how not to act like it. In February of 2017, 1 year ago, President Trump repealed an Obama-era regulation that would have made it easier to block the sale of firearms to people with certain mental illnesses. That I had with the shooter before the shooting and the information that I currently know about him, I don't really know if he was mentally ill, but I wrote this before I heard what Delaney said. Delaney said that he was diagnosed. I don't need a psychologist, and I don't need to be a psychologist to know that repealing that regulation was a really dumb idea. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa was the sole sponsor on this bill that stops the FBI from performing background checks on people adjudicated to be mentally ill, and now he's stating for the record, well, it's a shame that the FBI isn't doing background checks on these mentally ill people. Well, duh! You took that opportunity away last year! The people in the government who were voted into power are lying to us. And us kids seem to be the only ones who notice and are prepared to call BS. Companies trying to make caricatures of the teenagers nowadays, saying that all we are is self-involved and trend-obsessed, and they hush us into submissions when our message doesn't reach the ears of the nation. We are prepared to call BS. Politicians who sit in their gilded House and Senate seats funded by the NRA telling us nothing could have ever been done to prevent this. We call BS. They say that tougher gun laws do not decrease gun violence. We call BS. They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. We call BS. They say guns are just tools like knives and are as dangerous as cars. We call BS. No. They say that no laws could have been able to prevent the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred. We call BS! That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS! If you agree, register to vote, contact your local congresspeople, and give them a piece of your mind.
Now, I want to say something here real quick before I get into my little slideshow here. I think it is totally disingenuous of the adults that are handling this child. There's no way that she came up with all these things on her own. And there's no way she would have been able to stand up and say these things without the encouragement of these adults. And so I say shame on you adults. Now, let's get into this real quick here on the things that she got wrong, factually wrong in this. Point number one, probably not the last mass shooting. We need to fix the problem, not the symptom. And I hope this is the last mass shooting. I'm not saying I'm wishing for more. I hope this is. But until we fix the larger problem, and I'll get into that in a little bit, until we fix the larger problem, we're going to continue to have these things. Point 2, multiple times the shooter had interacted with law enforcement and local government agencies that could have held and evaluated him for mental health issues, but didn't. The weapon was not the problem. Those who sold him the weapon were not at fault. They followed the law. Okay? So she got that factually wrong there. 3, the shooter was at fault for the shootings because the local government, law enforcement, and the FBI were culpable and or complicit in the crime. Again, they weren't doing their jobs. They didn't do their jobs. And this kid slipped through the cracks, as it were. And as a matter of fact, I hate even using that analogy, because it doesn't speak to the larger issue here. That the FBI on 2 occasions missed it. 39 times in 7 years, the local law enforcement was called to the resident's house. And also the Department of Children and Youths down there in Broward County. And nobody thought it was bad enough. Oh, we just can't do this to this young man. We can't institutionalize him, or we can't hold him and do a psych eval. Again, you're talking about, and this is the 15th problem that's not her problem, but it's the 15th fact that everybody's leaving out, that all this happened with inside Broward County, Florida, which is the most liberal county in the whole state. So put that in the back of your mind and think about that for a little bit. Point number 4, the AR-15 the shooter had was not a full automatic weapon. The shooter didn't have a license to buy one in the first place. The AR-15 is a semi-automatic weapon. It means one trigger pull, one shot. You got to release the trigger and pull it back again to shoot the next bullet. It's semi-automatic. Most people, when you think of assault weapon, they think a full automatic. A machine gun, in other words. And this is not a machine gun. Point 5. The NRA didn't give the Trump campaign $30 million. That would have been illegal. It spent that money on campaign ads, which is lawful for a group like the NRA to do. It's called advocacy campaigning. And so she was factually wrong. The Trump campaign didn't get $30 million. $30 million were spent on ads that the NRA sponsored to talk against his opponents, and they're not the only group that does that, and it's totally legal to do so. And I'm glad that there's organizations, I don't care if you're on the left or right, I'm glad organizations are allowed to be able to do this. Okay? Now, the next set here, we're going to start off with point 6 here. The NRA is made up of millions of Americans, and the last time I checked, we have freedoms to support whatever groups we want in America. She was really telling everybody out there by her insinuations that anybody that belonged to the NRA or supported them had blood on their hands. No, we don't. I'm sorry, young lady, we don't. My weapons in my house, my guns, have never been used illegally. Never. And as long as I draw breath, they never will be. So you can't just make blanket statements like that. That's a factually wrong statement that she made. 7, President Trump has no control over the NRA or what the NRA does with its advocacy dollars. Again, and the NRA is a non-governmental group. It's a private group. It has rights under the Constitution. Its members have rights, and the members of the NRA, and I'm not a member of the NRA now. I used to be a long time ago, but I'm not now, and my reasons are my own for that. But the people who are use the NRA as their voice at Capitol Hill. They use the NRA to protect their Second Amendment rights. These folks out there, and this young lady, Emma, acts like the NRA's out there just doing whatever they want, regardless of who supports them or not. That's just not the case. And this is what the left, and this is how the left has always painted the NRA. Number 8, President Trump's repealing the Social Security mental health issue didn't have anything to do with the shooter. It applied to senior citizens on Social Security. If you remember, if you go back, this was an Obama-era regulation that they got passed to have the Social Security agency go through the senior citizens, and if someone had to help them with their finances, they could get their guns taken away from them. So this didn't have nothing to do with the Florida shooter at all. Again, another factual error on her part. Number 9, the whole line of BS is wrong. Everything she calls BS is totally wrong. And I guess you that could be not a point, but I put it in as a point anyway. 10, tougher gun laws don't decrease violence. Ever hear of Chicago? You know, she made the point where you know, all people say that tougher gun laws don't, you know, they don't decrease violence, or they, no, she was stating that tougher gun laws would decrease violence. And they don't. Ever hear Chicago? Chicago has the most restrictive gun laws in America, and yet it is the gun homicide capital of America. And they have the strictest gun laws in Chicago. So again, another fact that she got wrong. 11, good guys with guns do deter bad guys with guns. Studies and surveys of prisoners support this idea. Now she said, you know, there's people out there that say good guys deter bad guys with guns, and she called BS on that. Okay, all these are she's calling BS on. It is estimated on the low side 800,000, and on the high side 2.5 million crimes are thwarted each year by good guys with guns. So again, she calls BS on the good guy with the gun argument, and what she actually has done is really stepped into a bad area that she cannot be supported, and whoever wrote these speeches for cannot support this either. Now, the last slide we're going to get into here is the let me get here. Number 12, she says that, you know, there's people out there say that guns are more dangerous than, or cars are more dangerous than cars, and yeah, cars are more dangerous than guns. And she called BS on that. Well, cars are more dangerous than guns. Cars kill almost 2.5 times more people each year than guns. And she probably didn't even know that. 13, she calls BS on, you know, more laws won't stop crime. And oh, that's BS. Laws cannot stop bad people from doing bad things. Our nation's prisons are full of people breaking the law. So no law that you could put on the books are going to stop these crimes. It's just not going to happen. You know, any gun control laws, let's put it that way. Number 14, she talks about, you know, she tried to explain how government works and stuff like that, and she has proven through her speech that she doesn't know how government works. She really doesn't. And then 15, again, take a look at this place that she's given the speech that she lives in, that this shooting happened at. It's in Broward County, Florida, the most liberal county in Florida, hands down, bar none. Bar none. Okay? Now, I was going to talk, I was going to get into a little bit of the up here about the AR-15 and all these weapons and stuff like that. I have a 9mm pistol. Has an 18-round clip, and you can put one in the barrel, which means I have a fresh start on the pistol. I have 19 rounds I can use. I've been told that's too many rounds. And again, I ask people that talk about this, what's the right amount? What's the right amount of bullets? What's a fair amount? And they never give you an answer. They never give you a straight answer. And I'm of the opinion, as long as you're not using that weapon illegally or in the commission of a crime or anything, I don't care. I don't care if you have a 30-round banana clip on it. I don't care if you have a 100-round drum clip on it. If you're not using it illegally, it doesn't matter to me, because it's not an assault weapon. My pistol is not an assault weapon, although the criteria by which some people talk about it, it is. But it's not an assault weapon. Okay? And again, everything she was talking about, I don't want to make this video too long, but everything she was talking about in here, like I said, she had, if you want to take number 9 out, okay, number 15 out, okay, that would still leave 13 things she got factually wrong in that short 7.5-minute speech. So my question to you is, are you going to listen to this girl who I believe is being controlled by a bunch of liberals in Broward County? Or are you going to do some of your own research and use some of your own common sense and reasoning to figure out if she's telling the truth or not? And tomorrow I'm going to work on another video about the movement that these students have started up, and I can't remember the name right off the top of my head, but the student, not one more death or something like that, not one more shooting, something like that on March 24th. I'm going to talk about what they have to say and point out some of the things. Just in the first hearing of it, I picked out 4 or 5 points that were factually incorrect. Again, I don't mind that high school students are talking out. I don't mind if they're civic-minded. What I do mind is when they're dishing out a lot of BS and trying to tell us that what we think and what we feel is BS. Now, before the making, as I was just getting ready to make this video, I did see on One American News Network that I think it was One American News Network that was saying that a legislator in Florida has introduced legislation to do away with the gun-free zones. Now, some of the common, and this is the other point I wanted to make here quick too, some of the common sense things that could be done, I'm going to talk about in my next video that I'm going to do about how we can eliminate school shootings. But one of them is stop making these schools like a turkey shoot. Gun-free zones do not save lives. Talk to the folks up in Chicago. They do not save lives. Matter of fact, they make it easier for criminals to pick out their targets. Because if you ask prisoners, and there's been studies done on this, far and away, the people that they most fear are the citizen who is trained and is concealed carrying, and they don't know about him. They know if the police are called, they got 15-20 minute leeway by the time the police respond to a crime. They know they got that time, but what about the citizens that are standing around loitering in the store or restaurant, gas station, or whatever? They don't know if they're armed or not, and if they're in an area that doesn't have strict gun controls, chances are there's going to be some folks out there that are concealed carrying that might stop them. And they fear that more than they do the police. The good guy argument that she calls BS. So again, I love that our school students are speaking out, but I wish they do some fact checking before they do this and quit listening to their liberal handlers that they have here. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, folks, and God bless, and we'll see you on the next video.